So, Ryan, why is it that you like Carrie Mulligan? Because she's got a great ass.
Oh, no. I thought you were going to pretend like you were going to throw it to me as Ryan, and I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to, like, stare.
Oh, that also would have been good. So, yeah, I'm Oscar Isaac. You can believe that I'd be a bad dude, right? The problem is he's too smart to play a dumb guy. I did not buy it at all.
Perfect in Ex Machina.
Because he played a dumb guy?
No, because he was too smart in that movie. Welcome back to the Oscar Isaac cast, everybody, where we talk about movies that star Oscar Isaac. This is Volume 3.
The Oscars.
The Oscars. You can catch Inside Llewyn Davis and Ex Machina on the channel as well. But today we're going to talk about Drive. A little movie
Driver.
you've heard of, especially people on Reddit. I don't think any of them have ever heard of this movie.
Is that like La Gem Moon? It's the thing is, it's a little above you, like Inception.
Oh God! To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Drive. What the hell is a Nicolas Winding Refn? Garrett.
Oh, NWR.
What is that? Who is that?
He's what is he, Dutch? He's something.
He's definitely a person.
He's an Anglo-Saxon. He's a director that does stuff. And this is one of the things he does.
Wow, that's really stupid.
I don't know what you want me to say. I mean, like...
Well, you're the resident NWR expert here, so...
No, I haven't even seen all his movies.
Most of them.
I have not seen Fear X or the Pusher trilogy.
You've seen most of them.
I've seen his stuff that's on Blu-ray, I think.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, he, if you want me to just off the top of my head name, because I don't have anything pulled up for this.
So he's a weird-ass director.
He's not, that's the thing is he's not weird. He's like, he's almost like a Kojima.
Yeah.
Where it's like he's influenced by things that I like, but I don't necessarily think that he does them as good as the things he's influenced by.
And there's a veil of kind of pretentiousness to it.
A little bit.
But that's kind of also the point and the joke, I think. I think he definitely knows.
Right. No, it's not like he's a dumb guy or he's like Neil Breen or he doesn't realize what he's making is terrible, sort of a thing.
Well, none of that. Well, it's like there's an interview of him with William Friedkin talking about Only God Forgives, and he's like calling it like the greatest movie ever or whatever, and says like Citizen Kane is just whatever compared to it. Like he's totally knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't find it to be legit.
I think one of his things too is like he has a weird sense of humor.
Yeah.
So I think he likes to get reactions out of people, and so he will say those types of things. I remember, it was the thing. It was like with William Friedkin. He's like, we need to call this the greatest film ever, and he's like, no, we need to call you an ambulance because there's something wrong with your head.
William Friedkin just roasts him.
I love it. He's so funny. But I mean, it's one of those things to where, I mean, in a way, I mean, I would not say he's as good as like Gaspar Noé or Hodorowski or any of the people like that, but he does have his own way of telling stories. I still think he's figuring out, like, he's not like Lynch and the fact of like he has his stable of eccentric characters and he kind of casts differently in order to find the stuff. He seems to take Hollywood ideas and Hollywood casting and puts them in the weird movies that he wants to see them in, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
But it's like if you break his stories down, they're very cliched. They're very surface. With the exception of a couple things, it's all like from point A to point B to point C, and it's more of like his visual storytelling, or the way in which he has the dialogue come through, or the way which he doesn't have any dialogue at all, sort of a thing. I think that's kind of what makes him a little bit different, and he's kind of on that second tier. He's not one of the greats for me, But I can definitely appreciate what it is that he's selling, and I really think that the TV format is the perfect thing for him because it allows him to kind of expand out his world and to say more things that I think he wants to say and have the story actually be as interesting as the visuals. And when he's given that opportunity, he excels in it. And when it has to be 90 minutes, I don't think it's as interesting.
Sure. I can see that. He almost gives his characters and his worlds more room to breathe so that you can kind of sit in every moment and every story beat and have it last as long or as short as it needs to. In reference particularly to Too Old to Die Young, where episodes are variable lengths of from ranging from 30 minutes, I believe the finale is, to an hour and a half. So it's kind of in that way, like knowing what needs to be done for each element of the story and how much time needs to be spent where to get a certain reaction, like you said, out of a person. I would say that some of them are very challenging, particularly that one, but Drive,
they're not feel good movies.
No, but Drive is certainly I would think his least challenging film, which I think gave a lot of people the wrong idea of what kind of filmmaker he was, because that was the one that kind of hit it big.
It kind of seems like the thing that he wanted to say about Drive was not the thing that people were sold on. Kind of like Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad is about how, I mean,
don't idealize Walter White.
There you go. Thank you. That's that's better than what I was going to break down and take another 30
a man that has no life and subsequently destroys the people around him in an attempt to find some sort of purpose, I guess.
Yes. So he's the protagonist, but he's not the good guy.
Yeah.
But if you're rooting for him to be successful in his drug business,
yeah,
maybe you got the wrong idea. I mean, obviously you can watch the show however you want, but I think the thing that Vince Gilligan was getting at is these are complex characters and they will do things that you hate and you will also feel sorry for them, but it's also talking about how things in the real world maybe work.
And you can certainly see that kind of stuff in Breaking Bad, especially with like the internet and people's intense hatred over Skylar and her trying to stop Walter, her husband, from doing all this stuff, but they don't seem to understand how much a meth empire can pull apart just a humble family. So,
well, and what meth does to the individual users.
That's true too.
You know, and he was, not only was he a teacher, but he was also a scientist. So it's like he understood what it was that he was making, what it would do, but didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I mean, there was a good reason why he needed the money, which is a completely different political topic to talk about.
There is, and there isn't too, because that in that case comes down. We're going to do a Breaking Bad cast now, I guess, but that comes down to pride, right? He had an easy out. He had a friend who offered to do it, and he didn't want it. But
so it's like it's a noir trope of having standards, but certain standards.
Sure.
To where it's like, no, I have to do it this way. I have to be able to make the money myself. I can't just have it given to me or people feel sorry for me, sort of a thing. And so it's like, I think that NWR likes to play with those things. And then when people get a different idea about it, or they maybe didn't catch what it was that he was saying, that's why he went into a much further extreme in his other movies, because he's like, okay, I need to talk differently to the audience.
So what would you say the message that they should not have received here was? Idealization of, or I guess idolization of the driver, or?
Yeah, the fact that that he could be as violent as possible and still be the good, caring guy that would take care of the family, and that they should, like, the characters should get together and live happily ever after.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I almost think it could have been an interesting ending to have him just brutalize as many people as possible and just go back to the girl and the son and just, like, be happy.
Sure, even but that's almost like every Western. That's like every Hollywood Western in the 50s.
Yeah.
That's the thing that
I'm
to
coming
me,
at it from like almost like a psychopathic standpoint, right?
sure. But that's the thing. Like A Clockwork Orange, that's how the writer wanted to end the story, was that Alex was
Regression.
rehabilitated,
Oh,
and then he gets a family, because he
yeah,
added that chapter into his book, and it wasn't the one that was in the when he originally
yeah.
released it,
Well, I was
in
thinking
America.
like a it's a weird comparison, but like a Ted Bundy kind of thing where he
Right.
does all this like fucked up shit, but then is just like the family man on the side, I guess, but is also weird. I don't know. I jumped kind of to the ending there, but
No, that's fine.
and I
No,
think a lot of people also go, "Ooh, cool car chase! Wow, lots of gore, pew pew."
and that's the thing too, is it's not even like, okay, well, NWR is doing a movie or a type of movie that would have been done like in the 70s or whatever. I mean, but of course that completely like negates all the really cool movies in the 80s like Henry and Maniac, or even like S. Craig Zoller
Yeah,
literally puts brutal violence in his films, but it's even though it's shocking when it happens how brutal it is, it always has a point
right.
to something. And I'm not saying that this doesn't have a point, but it's, I don't know, when the lady gets her fingers blown apart in the bank, that doesn't make you feel like, yeah, get him.
Right. You're
It makes
talking
you
about
think like, oh
across
my
the
god.
Yeah,
And it's the violence in Mandy is the same type of a
sure.
thing, where Panos knows when to have the violence, when to have the, I mean, vengeful movies, all the way back from like, I Spit on Your Grave, or any of the exploitation films, where it's rape revenge or whatever. It's like those always had a very specific point that they had, and they said something about it, but it didn't seem like necessarily we were cheering for the hero,
Right.
because it was an anti-hero. It was more like the spaghetti western, where it's like everyone's dirty. And
I
that's
don't know anything like that.
right. And so that's
Where
the thing, is
revenge
to
is
me,
bad and the person's bad for going on the quest. Anyway.
right. And that's why it goes back to the like German expressionist films, or the noir, or the early horror films.
Yeah.
Is it's like sometimes the visible monster isn't actually the monster, and sometimes the main character,
Not a monster.
is, even though they're the main character, we shouldn't like or revel in what it is that they're doing.
So why is it that you think that Drive took off as much as it did? Do you think it was it's, you mentioned it as well, it's kind of a fast-paced movie. It goes by pretty quick, mixed with like the synth stuff and like the almost vaporwave kind of stuff.
Right.
Do you think that in 2011 that kind of maybe wasn't in the public eye as much as it might be right now, and that maybe a lot of people took to that and found the atmosphere of this thing to be kind of interesting to them, maybe unique?
I mean, it definitely could be. It's probably a combination of things. I mean, it's sort of like, I don't know, like the bad boy of cinema. Like when Quentin Tarantino does something, and
Yeah,
everyone's like, "Oh, that's really cool," and it's like really easy to emulate and really easy to digest.
yeah,
Because I mean, there are no like deep, complex characters. They're all pretty one dimensional and one note.
yeah,
They're more like archetypes than actual characters. It's extremely flashy. You don't have to know anything about cars to appreciate the car scenes, because there aren't really any car scenes.
yeah,
You know, I think it's just kind of what you see is what you get, and
yeah.
that's really easy to enjoy.
And it's
It's a
shot well, and it, like I said,
it's
the
a
music is really good. So
it's a
maybe,
popcorn art
yeah,
film.
yeah. So it was really easy and really digestible, and there's a lot of these things that are easy to grasp and grab onto for people. So it took off a little bit more than maybe even Refn wanted it to, which is then you look at Only God Forgives coming right afterwards and being almost the polar opposite kind of movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like where he's like, "This is how you should have reacted to the character."
Yeah, and that, and he like casts Ryan Gosling in the role again. It's almost feels like a redo in some senses, and it's really slowed down.
If I remember correctly, Only God Forgives was supposed to be the movie he did after Valhalla Rising.
Oh, really? But then he did Drive instead? Or?
I think it was, yeah, because they thought that it would be more financially securable, because it wasn't something that NWR actually wrote. It was an adaptation from something. Yeah. So it's like they thought that it would be more successful, and then they did that, and then after it was successful as it was, then he was able to make Only God Forgives. If I read the stuff,
you can kind of do a subcast on that too, because I did see that you watched it.
Yeah, I went ahead and watched it today.
So this would be, maybe this cast is kind of a mix of both of them, because I think they're very easy to compare and weave in back and forth between the two of them. And I'm building up to that because I want to talk about how gorgeous of a movie Only God Forgives is. Because those colors are fucking wicked. The way Refn's able to kind of like, his neon seems brighter than any other director I've seen. It seems more neon-y.
Yeah, outside of like Giallo and things like that.
Yeah. It's just some of like the striking pinks and blues and reds in Only God Forgives are just like amazing. I don't know what other word to say.
It's like saturated.
Yes, it's very, very bright and colorful in contrast to the dark and brutal world. We usually see movies that are kind of more washed out or desaturated for a kind of a brutal story, but to see it with like the nice colors, I don't know.
It's if you go back and think about The Man Who Wasn't There,
yeah,
and about the contrast between the black and white that the filmography did, the cinematography was,
yeah,
so that the story that the Coens were telling stood out that much more. And it's like he did the same type of a thing, but rather than having it in black and white, he had it more of a European saturation. Because if you're to watch, as you know, any of those types of films, especially in the 70s, like all of them were so bright. And so that's why when you see like a faded print, you're like, nah, this isn't what it's supposed to look like.
Sure. I think of like a Suspiria kind of
exactly
vibe.
Yeah, any of the Argento giallos, definitely, or how was it? Is it Martini? Like, anyway.
Oh.
I can't remember his name. It's the one that did Your Room is a Vice and Only I Have the Key or something. It's
That's like a great name. Italian cinema has great names.
It's something like that.
I think it's just, it's very interesting to have this, like you said, oversaturation in the colors in any movie, really. It's just nice.
Yeah. It gives,
visually pleasing.
It's visually pleasing, and it gives the film itself character. It gives the room something interesting to look at.
Yeah.
Which is good, because I think Gosling says even less in this film.
I don't know. I felt like he was saying more. I think they're about even in the things they say.
It could be. It could be.
Because I'd seen that too going into it, and then he says a lot of lines. Just like short ones, but he speaks quite a bit. Like, I didn't find he spoke all that much in Drive either. But whatever. He's mostly quiet and staring in both movies, which works more in Only God Forgives than it does in Drive. I don't know why. I think maybe the character is a little more broken internally than his Drive character. The driver is kind of like a blank slate. But like Julian is kind of, he has a lot of more richer of a backstory to pull from, I think.
And I know Gosling did like a ton of training for the boxing, and I wonder if he was tired on set, because some of it seems like he's more drained.
Which is good, and it works into it.
Exactly. And I think Drive did not have that, because he was always forcing things. So either he could have grown as an actor, or he could have felt more to that character, or that was just what I mean, NWR might have wanted both of those to be exactly the way that they turned out.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, he could be growing as an actor, because where I was going to go is that he plays the same kind of role, but gets a ton more depth of it in First Man, which is quiet and staring, and a lot of like brokenness and pain, but just through his eyes. I think it kind of maybe has a ricochet.
Yeah.
Maybe I've picked up a lot of that from his character in Only God Forgives. I was finding he pulled a similar performance when he did Neil Armstrong. A little bit in Blade Runner, but to a little shallower of a degree on purpose because of the whole robot thing. But
spoilers.
First scene of the movie. Which I like about Blade Runner 2049. I do like how they didn't with him. They could have just done the is he a replicant, is he not a replicant movie, but they were upfront with it one way or another with that character. But that's a cast for another day.
Yeah, because I've only seen that once.
I think I've only seen it twice. Theater and then Blu-ray. It's been a long time. But in Drive, I almost feel like Gosling is too nice in the first half for what he becomes in the second half, and it's like tonally off completely. I don't see a breaking point. There's no point in the movie where he does the Joker snap or the Travis Bickle. Is that his name from Taxi Driver?
It is.
There's no point where you get that like break where he goes ham or whatever. It kind of just feels like an unnatural shift after the heist gone wrong.
Well, I mean, the problem is he's miscast.
Yeah, he starts off as a quieter version of his La La Land character, aka just Ryan Gosling, and then eventually he turns into his Only God Forgives character, but those are two polar opposite performances.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the tone itself would be fine if it switched like that, but some of it is, like you said, it's not really earned.
Yeah.
The switch, you don't really feel when that changes.
Oh yeah, you think of Andy where they switch in, like this switch is at the halfway point, and he goes from kind of, emotional to that complete killing machine, completely derived of emotion basically, but except for rage. But I don't really see that one in this. I found he was almost too like nice guy. Maybe that's why Reddit likes it. They saw themselves
because he's an incel.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, it's basically a similar performance was in A History of Violence, but it's Viggo Mortensen.
And Viggo's one of the greats.
Yeah, I mean, it's like saying, oh, Gary Oldman could do it. Yeah, well, no fucking shit he could do it,
He could do this performance? Oscar Isaac.
I mean, it would be different, but I think it would be interesting to see him do something like this.
Yeah.
I mean, a Most Violent Year kind of...
I still had to watch that. Who directed that?
Isn't that J.C. Chandler? Is that the same dude? You might want to look that up.
I'm trying to remember, because I remember watching something by him and being like, oh, I didn't mind that. I should watch it.
Maybe it's not him. J.C. Chander.
What did he do?
He did All Is Lost, Margin Call, Triple Frontier.
Oh.
Yeah.
Never mind. It was the opposite. I watched Triple Frontier and went, ooh, maybe I don't want to watch A Most Violent Year.
Yeah, he's not a bad filmmaker. He's more of a made-for-TV filmmaker. As I was going into A Most Violent Year thinking, oh, are we going to have a new Scorsese? No. So, yeah.
You don't even have that rated on Letterboxd.
I know, because I needed to watch it again.
Yeah, I would watch it just for him, but doesn't matter. Anywho.
That's like when I saw it, I don't think I knew who Oscar Isaac was.
That's fair.
So I'm like, yeah, to enjoy his performance or to see if he brings something different now that I know who he is.
We here at the Oscar Isaac cast love
So,
I
yeah,
love it's sidebar for him with his Star Wars interviews. Did you ever hear any of those?
he just doesn't care anymore.
For Rise of Skywalker, and they're asking him like, so what do you think coming out of this trilogy? What was your biggest takeaway of playing this kind of character? And he goes, I just should have let them kill me in the first one. I just should have let them. I shouldn't have like tried to stop it. I just should have bailed. And it's great because I agree.
He's the Harrison Ford.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
Yep.
He would have been a much better Nathan Drake than Tom Holland.
No, anybody would have been a better
That's fair.
Nathan Drake. I mean, see, that's the thing is putting these young guys in something that needs grizzled experience.
Yeah, but you got to do the fun origin story for the kids. It's not like we did that in any of the games. Wait, we did that in 2 of the games?
Now, origin stories aren't that interesting. It's what you do with where you come from that to me is the interesting part. And like all the
Uncharted 4. We already did the story. We don't need a young Nathan Drake story. We already did that story.
How many great directors show origin stories of characters?
I don't know.
I would argue hardly any, because Kurosawa always has characters either at a crossroads or older characters that are set in their ways that something has to change. Bergman always has people like at the end of their life. I mean, whether it's Seventh Seal and you're literally playing chess with death, or it's Wild Strawberries where it's a guy that's kind of like on his last trip. I mean, it's like everything has to deal, even Persona has a young kid in it, but everything has to do with like the identity of a person. And all of this is like either middle-age crisis or you're coming to the end of your life, because those are the interesting stories. Not how you got there, but what you do with what the accumulation of your stories are. It's the same thing that's interesting to me with noir, is it has everything to do with like broken men who's going out on their last job, or it's stuff with like Godfather where it's the rise, but it's also the one power has to drop off in order for the next power to come up. Yeah. So it's either transitions or it's once someone has become the thing, not how is it that they necessarily get to the thing. Even though that can be interesting, but that can't be the only thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like with Drive, it's the characters didn't necessarily feel distinct enough. It felt like they were being written by the same person. And I think the fact that I'm pretty sure that this is the only NWR where he at least didn't have a hand in writing it.
I think so.
So if that is the case, then that kind of is some of the reason why it feels so different from his other movies.
Sure.
You know, because it is literally coming from something.
It doesn't feel like him.
Yeah.
Which like it's comparison to like a Yorgos Lanthimos, who does The Favorite, and it still feels distinctly him, despite... Right.
It doesn't matter who writes it, almost. Yeah. He makes it his, from his direction.
Which is the mark of a great, but anyway.
Right. You know, and that's the... I mean, but that's also the flaw of Lanthimos, is you start to watch his films and you're like, oh, okay, I kind of feel like I figured him out now.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is every director is different, because Lynch always has a hand in writing his stuff.
And that's the thing, is like, you could actually make... I'm trying to think of what the word would be. You could like theorize of how, Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway and Twin Peaks are all tied together and they're kind of in the same universe because they're all Lynchian, but also at the same time, they're all extremely distinct and have their own personality and have their own characters, that you don't say, Dale Cooper is also this character in this other film and this character in this other film. It's like, no, there's only one. Even when Kyle MacLachlan plays different characters in the same movie, it doesn't feel like the same guy.
No,
but which is a testament to him. Right. So
and that's the point. I always liked the whole thing with the Blue Velvet to Twin Peaks and being like maybe a different universe's Blue Velvet characters turned into Cooper and Diane. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you have seen that picture collage of Evil Coop, or Mr. C, is in the diner eating, and then Cooper in the other universe is a different coupe. I mean, is sitting in a diner, and
Yes.
like almost the same shot. And then they're both getting into the car, which is a similar car and a similar shot in the two different things. And then they both pass by a door with the number 7 on the door, which is similar in shot. And it's just like that episode mirrors when we first meet Mr. C and the stuff going on. It's just those kind of visual references, even if you don't pick them up on the first time.
That's what's so rewarding about watching them over and over again.
Right. And that's this is the second time I watched Drive, and I didn't have as big of an emotional reaction to it.
Nope. Because I hadn't seen it since in 7 years, so I was fairly young when I watched it. So now coming at it from like a little bit more of a critical standpoint, and I actually understand some things now, was good, but I can't say I would watch it again for at least not for another 7 years. I would maybe listen to the soundtrack, but
sure. And my emotional reaction, it wasn't oh my god, this is fantastic. It was, this is not at all what I thought it was going to fucking be.
Right.
My emotional reaction was a negative reaction. This time when I watched it, I'm like, okay, I can appreciate it for what it is rather than what they sold it to me as.
Sure.
And what I was hoping it was going to be.
My emotional reaction was, holy shit, that gunshot was loud. So was your mix really bad or no? You never told me.
Oh, I forgot about that. It was, the dialogue was a little low, but the Blu-ray didn't seem to be like really out of whack.
My dialogue, I had to turn it up a high amount to hear it at all, which is what, when the gunshot all of a sudden went off, was like, ooh, some neighbors probably just woke up and called the cops. There might be some.
Right, and I listened with headphones.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that would make a difference.
Maybe.
And I didn't look to see what it was coded in as for the audio. I'd have to go back and see what setting it defaults to on the Blu-ray. It might default to, I mean, it wouldn't be mono. It might default to just surround and not 5.1. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, so I don't know. Anyway, that was a loud gunshot, though. The one that Oscar Isaac gets hit by.
Right.
Man, comes out of nowhere. I forgot. When she was walking across the street, I was like, wait, does she get shot here? And then it didn't happen, and I was like, oh, okay, nothing must have it. And then I jumped out of my seat because it was so loud, and I was like, fuck.
The thing is, my stupid head, when he pulls up and then the other car pulls up, I'm like, oh, okay, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's, I've seen so many movies that the positioning of the camera will tell me what's going to happen. And it's like, I kind of hate that. And I wish they wouldn't do movies that way, but I understand why they do.
Oh, I can pick it up sometimes, but I mean, the guy in the other car didn't shoot Oscar Isaac.
I know that, but it's like, to me, it's the difference between the car pulling up and you feeling the tense moment. You don't really feel anything in Drive, and then you're surprised by the gunshot. And then, sure. Okay, you ready for this? And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
ooh,
when Cliff Booth comes to Spawn Ranch, you're on the edge of your seat for that entire scene because you just know something is going to happen.
Yeah.
That to me is the difference in ratcheting of tension between the filmmakers. Is there was none of that
into Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I still get tense in that scene.
I know. When I was watching it on the 4K, I knew what was going to happen, and I'm still like, oh my goodness, is it going to suddenly change on my disc? And it's the thing, as much as I don't necessarily care for Aronofsky, the way Mother at the end, like you can't help but feel so uneasy. And I feel like I'm just watching it with Drive. I don't feel like I'm involved with the movie at all. It's like if suddenly a nuclear bomb went off and killed everyone in the scene, I'd be like, oh, okay. I don't know what it is, because there's like anything that can just happen out of nowhere isn't frightening, and anything that you're expecting isn't frightening. It's I don't know what is going to happen, but I think something is going to happen that like horror movies or whatever do so well. Like, to me, that's the more, if you're going for that. But it almost seemed like the violence and gore were almost an afterthought. Like they almost come too quickly. It's kind of like with the car chases. It's like the car chase happens. You're like, okay, you're going to sit in your seat. You got everything back. You're paying attention. Oh, it's over. They're just sitting there.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about that. It's almost like an anti-car chase.
Exactly.
It doesn't give it to you, which I think he perfects in Too Old to Die Young, in having a completely different style of car chase altogether. What's that? Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. You always get like the Baby Driver-esque, and I'm just using that because it's recent. Sure. But like the fast and flashy stunts and all that kind of stuff. When we looked at Bullet, and that was a lot more realistic of a car chase, right? Mm-hmm. Where everything has meat to it. This is closer to that, but also not. Everything is mostly shot from the inside of the car, so you don't get any like glamour shots of the chase or whatever. But like in Too Old to Die Young, it's just so good to have them like, you can't draw attention to each other on the street, so they're like just following each other, and like Barry Manilow is on the radio, and they're driving on the road. They drive for like 4 hours because it goes from like midnight to daylight, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And the one guy's car battery runs out.
Yeah, because it's an electric.
Yep. So I think he ended up perfecting that in that show, but
because he doesn't like cars or car chases.
Yeah.
So it's like, rather than doing them poorly, he made it into a joke.
Mm-hmm.
He made it into, hey, wouldn't you like to see a Prius in a high-speed chase? Well, Prius doesn't go high speed. Exactly. And it would run out of battery. Exactly. And so he put the realistic humor.
Yeah, but it works in the world, right?
Yeah, it does. It's the mundane humor. He actually turned it Lynchian.
Yeah.
He turned a normal thing that you don't give a second thought about and built an entire scene around it. And that shows the brilliance of someone that is able to write the scene rather than just doing the scene.
Speaking of Lynchian, we had talked about it off air, but I got when the driver rams Ron Perlman, I think, right? His car off the road. Mm-hmm. It feels very Mulholland Drive looking shot. And it's very, and I think you said it was supposed to be close to there at least. It's in LA.
I'm pretty sure.
Mulholland, because the bends look the same.
Right.
But it reminds me of that, of course, that car getting rammed off the road. Does that happen in another Lynch movie too? Lost Highway?
It does, yeah, because remember, he's like, I've got all these horsepower between in this car.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's getting shades of that. And there was a little bit of Lynchy stuff in Only God Forgives. Not as much as Too Old to Die Young, but that's just me kind of comparing the two a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I mean there are some things that have similarities with, and you can't help but note some of those just because of how strong a vision that Lynch has. But I mean, there were Kubrickian things in Only God Forgives. It's like
100%.
Yeah, so not only from camera movements, but even some of the like timpani drums that are kind of building and slowing down with his breathing, just like as in The Shining. There are so many things like that, whether or not they were intentional or not. It's just, I mean, it's like with stuff that Orson Welles has done. It's just become language of film. It's become so ingrained in film that it's just something you do to show something. And I can completely understand that, and not thinking that it's not like he's trying to rip him off.
Sure.
I don't feel.
Nope.
So
everybody borrows from somewhere.
That's true. I mean, and the thing is, everyone borrows from reality. And just because you were the first one to do it doesn't mean that it's, you're the only one that can do it.
Exactly.
It's understanding where it should be in the film and understanding how to, you don't want it. That's the thing, is like as soon as you start making rules, then you have to break the rules. Because it's like, if you're like, well, you can't use it in this scene. It's like, well, what if I want you to feel differently about the scene? Then I would use specifically a different feel so that you would be uneasy, or it wouldn't make sense, or it makes you think about that certain scenario. So there are no hard and fast rules where you can say, yes, you can, and no, you can't.
Well, it's like Tarantino borrowing from a ton of stuff, but molding his own thing out of it. So if you can understand kind of what you want to use and how to use it, and then do it well, which is I think the hard part, but you can kind of get something very good out of it. Antonio Margheriti.
Grazie.
Buongiorno. Inglourious Basterds is fucking good.
Yeah,
everything's good.
His movies are so good. That's the thing is, I have so much fun with Tarantino's movies because it's just so much fun, Jan.
That's it. He just loves making movies, and you know what? It's infectious, and it rubs off on through his movies. So he never takes himself too seriously.
Exactly,
and that's the fun of it, right?
Yeah. So it's like it's definitely enjoyable, even if you know where he got the idea from or knowing what movie he's. I mean, Navajo Joe literally is a movie.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I find that with Lynch too. Everything is still fun and funny, even if it's dark and fucked up.
Well, I mean, Gordon Cole literally comes from a film. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but just Gordon Cole.
Sure.
But if you know the person too, right? Like, if you see the behind the scenes stuff, Lynch is always very, like, what's the word? I don't know what the word is. Like, he's a character.
Yeah, and he's eccentric.
Yes, but it, like, the set feels very fun and welcoming and all that, and it, like, ports into the movies a little bit. What was your samurai point you wanted to talk about? Do you remember? It was so long ago.
Unless you're talking about Lust Samurai and the fact of the protagonist that doesn't say much.
Maybe you had brought it up. You were the one that you said, I hope Ghost of Tsushima is good on Friday because I didn't get my samurai fix from Drive or something like that.
Yeah, I'm almost 100% sure I was making a reference to Lust Samurai, the Melville movie.
Wow.
Because I mean, I know you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
You can tell the I wouldn't say the voiceless protagonist because he's not mute, but the guy who says more with his eyes than he does with his language. I mean, it's almost been a trope in film, and I'm not saying like Last Samurai was the first one to do it or anything, but it's just like that is such a especially in pop culture, ingrained into the type of character that it should be, and it's the filming of it, not just the character, because the character is perfect, but the filming of it is so much better that it's not comparable.
Sure.
To Drive. But it's I don't know. It has that European filmmaking already, which makes it more weighty, and it has. To me, it's like a jazz soundtrack almost always fits in this kind of thing a little bit better than like the Miami Vice soundtrack.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's some of the thing is like the stuff that I grew up with in the 80s is where this should have fit in, but it is almost incongruent with where it ended up being. I don't know. And again, I go back to my point of just because something is a certain way doesn't mean that everything should follow that, and making something different from that is a good thing. But I almost feel like those two things don't gel as well. It's kind of like Only God Forgives, I ended up liking a little bit more because there was almost no redeemable qualities. They didn't try to make the characters relatable. They tried to make him them as inhuman as possible.
We're all the biggest pieces of shit imaginable.
Yeah, kind of. It's just the fact that like they have so many weird tastes and wants and desires and actions that you never feel like, well, this guy needs to redeem himself, or I hope they get together because they'd make a great couple. Like none of that is in your mind, because it starts off right away. Hey, everyone's corrupt. Hey, everyone's kind of a douchebag. Okay, well, he did things a little bit differently because he didn't feel like this should be the outcome, but the outcome happens anyway. It's like fate just takes care of it or whatever. So it's like those things, you can tell there are more deeper subjects at play. Only God Forgives kind of seems a little more mythological in its storytelling.
Oh, 100%.
Which is way more interesting than just simple guy meets girl, guy wants to be with girl, guy too violent, guy right away.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I came here for a car movie, and you hardly even showed any cars. And that's one of the things too. I feel like not only is Ryan Gosling miscast, but a lot of the side characters are miscast.
Yeah.
Like Albert Brooks is not scary at all. He's a humorous guy. Like I never felt like he was dangerous. And it's like Ron Perlman's 150 years old, and I love him as Hellboy, but I would not like to be in a fist fight with a guy. Yeah, he's really big, but it's sort of like I can't imagine him coming out of the chair from a table at me hard enough to do anything. I certainly can't imagine Ryan Gosling having any problems. A stuntman that's built and has no problems at all with violence. He's worried about this, 70-year-old guy? Really? With no superpowers, that's just sitting outside with his valet. Seriously? Pop 2 caps in him, they're done. That's so for mafia movies, it doesn't really make sense. For a driving movie, it doesn't really make sense. So it's like I love Bryan Cranston, but Bryan Cranston kind of is the plot. It's like he has so much dialogue that he has to get everything in with the back characters, and it's so jokey. He kind of almost doesn't fit. It's like, man, I wish Bryan Cranston would just play a little more serious.
Yeah, I do think he was probably my favorite side character of the bunch.
Yeah, so
I
it's
think
like
he has a Bryan Cranston. He has a, which is kind of interesting. We're talking about Breaking Bad earlier, but
well, that's why I thought of it, because he's in it.
Level of depth I've found to his character and like history and all that. But I think it was because it was Bryan Cranston. I think he did a good job playing that kind of stuff, but certainly I agree on Albert Brooks and Ron Perlman. They're kind of off a little bit, just a little bit.
And like you can get away with that if one or two characters are off, but everyone else is exactly what they should be. But it's like Oscar Isaac doesn't really seem to be that kind of a character. He just exudes something different. So then you're kind of off there. And then Ryan Gosling is the pretty boy Disney Channel guy that's just smiley all the time. You're like, okay, well that's kind of off-putting. That doesn't really fit. And then the mafia bosses don't really fit. And then like the two nondescript bald Ukrainian guys that should be interchangeable, but one was the boss in one thing and one was somebody completely different in like with the dancers. It's like, why did you pick two guys that are nondescript that look almost exactly the same? I was like, the first time I saw it, I didn't even realize it was two different characters. I was like, what? Didn't they already kill this guy? Didn't they already slash his throat at the pizza place? Oh, it's a different guy.
So that would have been interesting if they just had him come back.
Yeah, that would have really been Lynchian. Oh, it's my
Fargo season 3.
Wow. Thanks for spoiling it.
But not telling you who. A character gets his head pulled off and then comes back.
Great. Well, now I know if someone gets their head pulled off that they're going to.
You were never going to watch it anyway, buddy.
Wow. I own the first season.
I said Fargo season 3.
I know what you did.
You motherfucker, which you will never buy because it's not on Blu-ray.
So anyway, I feel like it was too many. It's sort of like the suspension of disbelief. Like you can suspend your disbelief for certain things. I mean, first off, you're watching a movie.
What? Really? This was a movie?
God.
I haven't made that many jokes this podcast. So tell me a little slack. I'm trying to be serious.
You ever want me to come back again? No.
Talk that devil shit.
So it's, yeah, we should have had Kathy Bates. No. So it's like, Carey Mulligan was fine. I was like fine with her
Bobby
performance.
Boucher.
Gosh, the foosball is the devil. Carey Mulligan was fine, but I could tell that role was tailor-made for Jenna Malone, but he didn't know who she was yet. So, anyway.
You think Jenna Malone could do that girl next door, but with a kid? That was the vibe I got.
You haven't seen the other stuff she's been in, have you?
She's been in a lot. I know she's your celebrity crush, but
I'm saying you haven't seen Neon Demon, and you haven't watched the rest of Too Old to Die Young.
Yeah.
So that's. It's like he has a certain type of character in mind, and she embodies it, and it's like this is a prototype for that character. Gotcha. Or the actress that he would look for. It's like that. it's not at all comparable, but like the Laura Dern. When Lynch needs a certain type of character, he's like, Laura, come and do that character because you know how to do it. So but I was fine with her, but I could feel like, wow, this is really a performance that he would have Jenna do. So,
Sure.
so I was fine with that, but it was all the other. I mean, it's like the kid was fine. The kid was just a kid, and he seemed, amicable enough, and he actually seemed to have a bit of chemistry with Ryan Gosling,
even though he didn't say anything.
Yeah, but it's just like you could just tell that the kid was a good kid actor.
Yeah.
And you don't really need much more than that, really. So it's like that side of the story, I think, kind of ended up working a little bit better, and why it doesn't necessarily fit with the rest of the story, because they fit too well as that, and everybody else did not fit in what they were in.
Right.
So it's almost like if it was a story about the guy coming back and being violent and Ryan Gosling having to do something about it while he was also trying to race cars with Bryan Cranston, it would have fit perfect because most of those characters in that fit fine. But it's the shoehorning in of the seedier side and the shady side and what was supposed to go from there. Like Christine Hendricks was terribly cast. Like,
yeah,
other than noticing that it's her, she brings nothing to the table whatsoever.
She's barely in it.
So, and she was like
book too.
She was like highly billed as well. I remember that when the posters and everything came out. Anyway, so and this is just my estimation. Again, NWR could have looked at this and was like, "This is exactly the way that I wanted it. It fits my vision perfectly," and that's completely fine. And other people could watch it and they'd be like, "It does all the stuff that I want," and that's fine. But just in my opinion, none of those fit to me, and it was sticking in my head, and there were too many of those little things that stuck in my head, along with the everything in the media for the trailers and the way it was advertised had it as this is a car movie. You're going to have a lot of chases, and everything is like about him driving, and he was a driver, but there was hardly any of it that had to do with driving.
Yeah, I don't remember the trailers for it.
That's fine. And at this point, it doesn't matter because people know what it is. It's almost like complaining about knowing what the Sixth Sense twist is now. At this point, really? I was going to make a joke, but I'm glad I didn't.
It's all right.
So anyway, I would, like, your question here, is Drive overrated? I would say that I do think it is.
A little bit.
I definitely don't think it's a bad movie. I don't think it's a movie that people shouldn't see.
I think it's fast and fun. It looks great and has a good soundtrack, and that's about it. But it's not very deep,
right?
But it's an easy breezy hour and 45 minutes or whatever it is.
And if this is someone's favorite movie, great. It's like people don't have to like the same things for sure.
Maybe some of the stuff we mentioned you should check out as well. Maybe it'd be up your alley. If this is a stepping stone for people to other movies, then so be it. If this is the mainstream movie that gets them into Last Samurai or further in NWR's catalog, or dipping other ways into Lynchian stuff or Kubrick's stuff, or that's all the better for it. I know a lot of people that I've heard of a lot of people that have kind of had used this as a stepping stone to get further, which is.
But I have to say, this is a good way to weed out people, whether or not they have much knowledge of film, when they make a list of the greatest car chase sequences in cinematic history and they put Drive on it. then you know that they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It's someone I followed on Twitter.
Oh, they had that?
Did that. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. It's saying nothing about the merits of the actual film itself, but to call this in any shape or format a great car movie, no.
It's not like I even felt it, and I haven't seen that many car movies in quotation marks, but I felt it was trying not to be. It's more of a character thing, and
right.
than
It's
it is
a
about
crime
the
drama.
in the car chases.
Yeah.
There isn't even really an actual car chase.
Well, there is. So when the Chrysler 300 is going after the Mustang, and he turns backwards and still keeps upshifting.
Yeah, that one, the one car chase.
Like,
when he turns back,
reverse is one gear.
Shoot him.
You can't pop into a faster gear going into reverse. Like, that's just so
well, NWR doesn't know about cars.
I know. He doesn't even have a driver's license after 8 times taking the test. And again, that's completely fine. I mean, he has so much money.
It's entertaining, dude. That's all.
Sure.
Like I said, it's not shallow. It's fairly shallow. It's not that deep, but it's like fun. I don't know. It had a good atmosphere, and it's. That's all I find it. I think you're saying it's with weeding out or whatever. I think it's a good double feature to watch Drive and Only God Forgives. Compare the two, see how you feel.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't like Only God Forgives.
Right.
And
I think they're pretty on par on two separate sides of the coin. One being the fun stuff, and the other is a little bit more typical NWR. I think the slower pace and more fucked up people. But
that's the thing. Only God Forgives was the thing that made me want to watch more NWR. Because after Drive, I was just like, okay, I don't care.
Yeah.
But then I watched Only God Forgives, and I'm like, wow, people hated this movie, and like it was booed at Con.
Was it?
Hey, yeah, it was, and people walked out.
It won another festival, Sydney, I think. It won the top prize.
And it's like I was always like, Only God Forgives is really interesting. I still think it misses the mark. But yeah. I think there are so many interesting things that it does, and I could see so much potential with what was there. I was just like, in my mind, I'm like, Gosling is his weak link. If he will do something else without this guy,
yeah,
you know, and that was what was the interesting thing, is going back in his filmmaking and watching Valhalla Rises
with Mads,
and I'm like, yes, that is the kind of actor he needs. And then watching Bronson with Tom Hardy, I'm like, oh my god, why didn't he use Tom Hardy? So it's like having
Tom Hardy was probably shooting Batman.
I know. Thanks a lot, Nolan.
And Inception before that, if they had done it before. So.
And I like Inception, but yeah, I mean, we could have done without Hardy to have. Anyway.
He has so much fun in Inception; it's awesome.
I know. I do like
when he whips out the grenade launcher and shoots it at the building. Yeah,
you have to dream a little bit bigger, baby.
Yes, changed me as a kid. Movies are great.
They are, and movies are art, and they say different things to different people. And that's why
filmmakers can say different things within their different works.
And that's why you should never write off a director just based on one film.
Right. You need a good number of them before you can go like actually understand what they are, and even that.
You have to watch all of them to understand what they are.
Yeah, I think of like David Ayer, where I was like, let me just watch this one and didn't like that. Let me watch this one. Didn't like that. All right, let me watch this last one. I didn't like that either. Should I watch his last movie? There's only one movie I haven't seen, which apparently is his best one.
Is that Fury?
And yes, and I don't believe people.
And, well, I haven't seen it either because I don't believe people either.
I own the steelbook. I got it for $2 at a pawn shop. But it was only because it was $2.
I mean,
but I like Shia LaBeouf, so maybe I'll watch it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, like,
But I like Jake Gyllenhaal.
Someone makes a movie in a genre that I like, then I'm more apt to watch something that they have done, because it's like, I'll like it. I will at least like it or enjoy what they bring to the table, or if they see what they bring to the table. More so than something like completely, like David Ayer decided to make a romance movie. Well, you know what? He can't do characters. I don't care at all to see that.
That'd be so funny.
But it's like NWR.
The world. NWR makes movies in genres that you are like have a hard on for.
Well, sure, but I mean, if NWR was to make a movie, even a genre I don't like, like if he was to do a La La Land with Ryan Gosling, I would probably still go see it, just because I like his films now, and I understand him more. I still Drive is my least favorite of the films of his that I've seen, because it seems to be the least like him. I mean, there's still elements of him there, but it seems to be, to me, to be the least like him. So
that's fair.
I love his newest work, and I love Bronson. To me, those are his perfect movies. But the thing is, Bronson is the most Kubrick-like, because it's basically A Clockwork Orange in similarity, and then Too Old to Die Young is his most Lynch work, because it's basically The Return. So maybe some of it is just my biases are so biased that the only way.
You hate it when I recommend movies that rip off other things.
But that's the thing. It's not that he rips them off. They're separate. Well, to me, it's like I love the original Wicker Man, and I was so afraid that Midsommar was going to just be a ripoff of the Wicker Man that I was like, I didn't go see it like opening weekend. I did see it in the theater, but I didn't see it as soon as it came out. But when I saw it, I'm like, why did I ever doubt Ari or whatever his name is? Because it's a brilliant movie, and it's only it's only a tangential. What was that?
It's not Wicker Man.
It's not Wicker Man. There are some similarities, but anyone who says it's just Wicker Man doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, because I love both movies. They've seen the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man where he punches a bear. God.
Oh, does he?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't punch a bear. He's in a bear costume and he punches a girl.
What? That's better.
I know.
I gotta
watch that. It's great. I own it. I think it's out of print now.
Oh. There's a lot of movies I have to watch.
Anyway, there's a lot of movies everyone has to watch.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, I mean, but the thing is, I mean, I like different movies too. I mean, you know that. Like, I will watch the weirdest shit that no one has ever seen just because I like different flavors. My problem is when whatever it sets itself to be, it is, and it doesn't do anything different or interesting. Or it doesn't feel like it's the person, like, it's something that person was passionate about. Like, I love passion projects.
Yeah.
Whereas the person tried so hard to get it made, and he might have tried so hard to get Drive made. I don't know. But I didn't feel the passion in it, and therefore it doesn't feel as, it feels overrated in that aspect. But
sure. Fair enough.
I feel like his films are probably like his children, and he loves them all.
You would hope. I would think that is how he is. He hasn't had a catastrophe yet, so.
Right, yeah, I've not hated any of his movies.
Right? Or Lynch. He hasn't had like a Dune or anything.
Yeah, that's the weird thing.
Going, like, I don't want to think about that movie ever again.
I don't know that NWR has never had Final Cut on his movies. I mean, Drive is his most commercial movie. But I haven't really heard him complain about any of those things.
I would imagine he does, or he has a say in it if he's not complaining.
Right.
Because otherwise, Only God Forgives would be cut to shit, probably.
It wouldn't have been released.
Yep.
Because there's so many. I mean, the violence in it is very interesting, but also like the things that it says, and the fact that it's hanging more on concepts than on plot.
Yeah.
About fate and about justice.
There's a whole interesting, is it Freudian kind of aspect to it?
There's that, but then there's also like, not Othello. What's the one? There's like, I'm sorry, what?
Is it Oedipus? I remember looking it up. Orpheus Rex or something like that.
Oh, Oedipus.
Oedipus. There you go.
Isn't that how it's? I don't know.
Or OED. I don't know. OEDIPUS.
Right, where it's like the attraction to your mother or whatever, or the family.
Is that what that is?
You know what? I mean, I'm an idiot.
That's what Freud is. That's what I was talking about.
Tell me about your father. Okay, Oedipus or whatever Rex is a play. Yeah, where he would kill his father and marry his mother. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the Greek tragedy basically.
But I think especially of this image that I'm sending you, of the man with his eyes cut out, and you think of that being kind of what happens to one of the guys,
right?
As well.
Well, and then the scales of justice. The lady is blind, so that she's able to judge based on the weight.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is there's like all of this mythological, almost like biblical storytelling where it's archetypes going through concepts, and that is difficult. I mean, first off, that in and of itself is difficult to come across on screen, because in a play you have so many words and you have so many things that are just understood by the audience. So it's like to take all the dialogue, or a lot of the dialogue, out and just have a lot of just scenes of visual storytelling, which I love visual storytelling, as you know. I think that there's more there to chew on and less just your regular plot. And that's why I think Told to Die Young is really interesting, because it is a story that has a really good story with this depth of conceptual archetypes as well. So it's like it's intertwined. It's the best of excuse me, it's the best of both worlds. It has the really cool visuals and the stuff that you can only see, or you have to pay attention to by looking at, and then you also have the regular story and the stuff going on. So it's almost like the more knowledge you have about books and concepts, the more things you'll be able to take in from that, or like contemplate on.
Sure.
Which I think is like I said, the best of both worlds. Whereas I feel like Drive only kind of had the story and didn't go into any depth, and then Only God Forgives almost swung too far in the other direction, where it was only those things, and then people were like, "Well, what's the story?"
Yeah.
But I still liked it.
They're both like almost shallow on the surface, except one has depth to it and all these different things that it pulls from, and the other does not really. And you have to guess which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the whole Shakespearean thing about they couldn't wash the blood off their hands, and they're saying "out, damn spot, out."
Yes.
And it's like there's scenes of that in the movie where Ryan Gosling is imagining that the sink is pouring out water, blood water, but it's all in a tinge of blue.
This is Only God Forgives.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's like the colors are representative of things. Like if you think of the red of being vengeance, and the blue of like looking for repentance, and it's it's
red pill and the blue pill.
Oh gosh, let's not even start that.
And there's a shot towards the start of the movie where there's red over one shoulder and blue on the other as he's trying to decide what path to go down.
Exactly.
That's what I was going for with my Matrix reference, you bitch.
So, I mean, to me, it was like the Mandy cast that we had, where I was talking about how musically, like each person had their own theme. I mean, that happens in like lots of movies, obviously. But it's like the musical instruments that were specifically used, and we talked about this too with Once Upon a Time in the West, where you have different instruments to indicate things about the characters. So not only does that tell you audibly that the character is going to be in the scene, or the character is in the scene, but it also the speed at which it's done, and the way is which it's done, and how it is presented could tell you things about the characters, whether it's like a driving guitar or drums or different things like that. And I kind of feel like there are essences of that starting to play visually, and I don't know if it's like he's coming to terms with that as a director and is getting stronger in his visual storytelling, because I feel like the cinematography and the visual acuity of Only God Forgives is stronger than it was in Drive, whereas Drive's kind of plain shot.
Yeah.
I don't remember too many scenes in that or too many camera angles where I was like, wow, that's really inventive. I just felt like it was kind of standard. Not that it's bad, again, but it's just like, a lot of the chase takes place inside the car. Well, yeah, that's probably for budgetary concerns, or
sure.
The things that we mentioned already about the scenes was like, oh, that was similar to a scene in Mulholland Drive. It's like the things that were noted as being scenes were noted because they reminded you of something in another movie, not because the scene itself was interesting. Whereas I feel in Only God Forgives, there's a lot of scenes where you're like, wow, the visual of the blade and him chopping off people's hands. What an interesting
black in the background.
Exactly. It's like this the visual scenes. The one where you like Ryan Gosling's hands are tied to the chair and the girl sits in front of him on the bed.
Yeah.
Like, that's visually interesting. And then it comes back to him being in the bar later with him feeling her, and then later him sticking his hand into his mother.
Yeah.
Like, all of those things tell the story.
Also, just you reminded me of that relationship with "Take It Off," which is hilarious.
Right. So it's interesting to me because you can see, I think you can see him grow as a filmmaker to have maybe it's the confidence to be able to show those things and not feel like he has to tell you it in the story. They're all like reinforcing, the using the is it the hairpins or the two needles to stab the guy in the knees,
Yeah.
like, or even just the karaoke machine where all the cops are sitting around looking at. Yeah, there's so many really interesting visual marks. It's like
the cop does it, and then a woman does it. Then the cop does it silently,
right,
and then the cop does it at the end.
Well, that's the other thing. The use of silence when the guy is begging for his life after he has had his hand cut off.
Yeah.
And Ryan Gosling came to enact vengeance with the gun, and he's like, why did you do this? Why did you kill my brother? We don't hear what it is that he tells him.
Yeah.
But that's almost more powerful than if we were to hear the words, because we can actually now pay attention to the reactions and not solely focus on what is being said, but why it's being said and the emotion behind it. And that takes a mature filmmaker to be able to say the audience doesn't need to hear it, they need to see it.
Sure.
And I to me, it's like those types of things I've noticed, especially in watching them relatively back to back rather than when they came out, that I find more fascinating from a filmmaking perspective, is like realizing when you can and you should do things just a little bit differently. And I think the movie is better off for it because those things become more memorable than what is memorable to me in Drive or the things that I didn't like it. What's more memorable to me about Only God Forgives is the things that I do like about it.
That's fair.
That's it.
I understand. I'm excited to dive more into his filmography because it's very interesting. So
I agree.
I'll probably, like I was saying, do Valhalla next, then Neon Demon, and then finish off Too Old to Die Young.
And then watch Bronson.
Yeah, I gotta find that one. That's the only problem with that.
In the U.S., Magnet has the rights to the Blu-ray, and typically those aren't but like $8 to $10 in the U.S. Now I know it'll probably be more in Canada, but those usually are fairly cheap here.
And I didn't check the Blu-rays, but
and I'm not telling you to buy it.
Well, that's fair. It's the only way I could watch Only God Forgives, which is why I bought it. We'll see what happens.
Only God Forgives. I guess I could always send it to you. I don't know how expensive it would be for me to send it to you.
I have no idea. Might be more expensive than me just buying it.
That's probably
something to look at. Got anything else for Only God Forgives or Drive? We kind of did a little bit of both, but more of one.
No, I've talked enough.
Fair enough. Well, if you like the show, all of our social medias and all that is down in the description below. Feel free to take a look, subscribe, give us a like or a comment, let us know what you think or what you think of these movies. And we hope to see y'all back here again real soon. Thank you very much.
No.
You're a liar, Crosby.